Hi, so I'm Derek, and this is a panel about Kickstarter, and I'll let Polo and Mike introduce their kind of background.
Hey everybody, I'm Polo. I did a Kickstarter, it seems like yesterday, but it was a year ago. It was Card Castle, fast action reactive card game, for any and all ages. But yeah, and was successful and finally shipped everything out except for a few people's, because special stuff. And
Cool. I'm Mike Selinker. I'm the president of Lone Shark Games. Before that, I was a creative director for Dungeons and Dragons and various other things that Wizards of the Coast did. Lone Shark has run 5 Kickstarters for the Maze of Games and its audiobook for the game, the Apocrypha Adventure card game, the Ninth World skill building game, and Thornwatch. Together, they've raised about $1.5 million, and they subsidize some of the other some of the other things we do. We make the Pathfinder Adventure card game, Lords of Vegas, Unspeakable Words, other board games. We also do puzzles and puzzle hunts and all that kind of stuff. We're about 3 blocks that way, so we can walk over here and mess with you guys if we want. So yeah.
All right. I'm sure everyone has at least heard of Kickstarter, since, as Mike has mentioned, there's been many games that have gone, and so, as game designers, I'm sure we're all kind of asking ourselves, is our game ready for Kickstarter? Like, can we put on a successful thing? So, what are your thoughts on that? Like, how do you know that you're ready to get your game up on Kickstarter?
Mike, you've done 5. Let's you go first.
Well, there's two sort of questions in that. I think they're subtly different. One is the game ready for Kickstarter? And the second is, are you ready to run a Kickstarter for your game? And those are very different things. The first depends on where you think the game's development falls on a scale that a time scale that people are paying very close attention to. I guess you'd want to decide whether you're running an aspirational Kickstarter. That is, if it gets funded, then you'll put in the design time and art time and development time and production time to do it. But if not, then you won't. Or you're going to do it anyway. You just need some cash. It would be great to have some. And so you do all that stuff up front. You say it's pretty much ready to go. There's some things we could get along the way that maybe will be a little bit different. And that's a personal choice, right? I mean, if you're an unknown designer, you might be better off with the latter approach, but it's not a guarantee, because that means you've put a lot of effort into your thing that maybe may not be rewarded. The worst possible outcome you can have in that case is to have your game fund, but not make enough to produce it. And so you really have to figure out where you are sort of economically, which falls into the second category of, like, are you ready to run a Kickstarter for your game? Have you done the research to figure out how much your game costs to make? Have you done the work to make sure that you know how long it will take you to get done and who will be doing all the steps that you need help with? Have you gotten somebody to help you, or are you just doing it by yourself? And all those questions have to be answered before you take a game to Kickstarter, because if you try to figure it out while you're going along, you're just going to produce a mess. And so you got to figure both those things out, and you got to be pretty solid about the answers before you go anywhere near pushing the big green rocket ship.
Actually, I agree. Yeah, because when I did my Kickstarter, I'm small potatoes, and still am compared to the living legend in here.
Hey, don't patronize me.
Okay, small potatoes
No,
together. There you
go. Big enough pool.
So, but yeah, you have to figure out, is your game ready? That's playtest.
Yeah.
A lot of questions, a lot of questionnaires, a lot of talking to people, going to your Tuesday game night sessions, back alleys, wherever you can find
Hold
someone.
on. Back alleys?
I don't know where you play your games at, but
Right.
if you got to play your game, underneath I-5 with
Sure.
homeless people, you get those last few demographics filled in. You got to do it, and once you fill that out, and you feel that everyone's saying it's a great game, positive, no one's checking off needs improvement, and deep down, if you feel like you're ready to go for it. But yeah, you're ready to do it. But the other side of the question is, are you ready? That's a whole nother story altogether, because you have to know a lot of the logistics with shipping.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know art. Kickstarter now, you have to have a complete product, or 99.9% complete product to show to the world. You can't just say, oh look, these are my concept designs. It doesn't work anymore unless you're
No, really, it doesn't work then either.
but still, you have to have a good chunk of this done, a decent video. You have to have some stuff ready to go, and then be able to say, hey, this is what it's going to cost, this is what I need, this is where I'm at, and be able to project that in 30 minutes, or actually, what 3 minutes in the videos, the open video?
Yeah, my videos are never that long.
Yeah, you have to
They're
put it
usually-
in like 1 minute or less, and then roll your dice.
Yeah, I think you, the people who are capable of getting elected president are not always the best people to run the country, and that's true often about every other thing that you can imagine, including people who run Kickstarters. There are people who do that. They're not necessarily game makers. They're not creative, but they can make Kickstarter campaigns good. And if you happen to know one and you like that person and they're willing to work with you, that's a great thing to have. Just to have somebody to talk to and to plan it out with. I mean, if you're soloing everything, you don't have a feedback loop. And so don't presume just because you are the right person to make your game, you're necessarily the right person to run your campaign.
So kind of along the lines of whether or not you're ready, and kind of playtesting, that's a good way to kind of get some people to know, do you think that there's a number for what you should expect your community, your existing reach to be before you go to Kickstarter?
Well, I like the way you phrase that, because a lot of people go to Kickstarter to find an audience, which is a nice hope, but it's a lot better to come with an audience that already might be interested in something that you're doing. And there's a lot of ways you could get that, right? You can release part of your game for free on, you can go to a community like GameCrafter or any number of the other forums that have board game environments. You can go to, if you're making a board game, you can go to Kickstarter or to Board Game Geek. You can go to, you could put a part of your game up on Steam. You can do all those things to already build a number of people who want to come when you launch the button. And that's way better than not having it, because if you don't, there's a chance that you will lose that first 24 or 48 hours that's sort of necessary to get a campaign up to the attention of a lot of people who you're trying to reach. And instead, you're spending your time, sending emails to people saying, hey, could you back my Kickstarter? And that's time you need. So I think you need some form of audience. And I think that's exactly the way you phrased it is exactly right. It's like, build it around the people who you've already convinced are good or are interested in what you're doing. And so, yeah, playtesting in public is pretty big these days. It's a good thing to do.
So I know you went around to a bunch of stuff. Can you describe what you went through trying to get your Kickstarter audience?
Let's see here. Where did I start? Okay, let's see. The tour for Card Castle. It was let's see here. Emerald City Comic Con. We did that. We went to PAX. We went to PAX West, PAX Prime. We went to Everfree. We went to not ZombieCon. We went to Crypticon. We went to Retro Gaming Expo. We went to we went to Renton City Comic Con. We went to like 5-6 different conventions, and throughout the year. And during that Mother's Day spread, there's like 3 conventions in a row. There's like Northwest Con, Soccer Con, all those other right there, and we have a team of 4. So we split the group up. We went to West Seattle. There's 3 different card games table shops in West Seattle. We went there every like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Went to Mox. Went to every other place you could think of that supported games. Yeah, because you have to get a diverse portfolio in order to do this. Because if you just come with your Facebook group, you're going to get maybe 10 people, your grandma, and a few various others. But you have to go out there and knock on the doors. Well, not but you have to knock on the game doors. You have to meet the people, play with the people that want to play games. Because if you're out there just sitting on the corner market, you're not really going to get a lot of people. But you have to go to the game stores to meet the people who want to play games, who want to pick up a game, and who are interested in your type of thing.
Do you bring anything with you to hand out?
Yeah. We play the game. We bring like buttons, coasters. Bring a card that says, "Hey, we're going to do a Kickstarter," with a link. And if you have the ability to at least get their information, like SurveyMonkey, you can take their info down, and then mass email. It's like, "Hey, we're going to go live in 24 hours," and then just keep people updated. You can't just use Facebook. You have to use Twitter. You have to use other forms of social media as well. And just always be in that person's face, because you have to have momentum, and once this momentum stops, it literally will stop. And who else? No one's going to pick it up. The person next to you is not going to say, "Hey, did you hear about this? That was yesterday's news. Today we're talking about Lone Shark Games here." So, but that's yesterday.
That's that 48-hour window that you kind of get to dominate the environment, and then people will still come. It's not like they'll go away, but that period of time is pretty good. And so I love the list you just knocked off. I mean, there were conventions in there, and there were board game stores, there were other places. Back alleys.
Yeah.
So I really like, one of the things that was great for us was having stores like Uncle's and Card Kingdom and stuff like that know about our stuff before it went on Kickstarter, because you can have a positive relationship with retailers when you run a Kickstarter. You can have a negative one, and so if you're already certain retail stores are already predisposed to you and your stuff, they'll spread the word and they'll say, "This is a great way to get this," and then afterwards you'll be sure to give them some copies so that they have some games to sell too, right? And so it's a nice environment to go into. I mean, we didn't do half the stuff you said. That sounds great.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks.
So the other thing that you kind of mentioned about getting ready was figuring out what costs you're going to have. Some of the bigger costs are like printing and finding manufacturers and stuff like that. Like, do you have any tips or suggestions on how to go about finding them, how to figure out estimating those costs?
Find the most expensive one and double it, and you're about right. Right, because I mean, in addition to the cost that it will actually have, there's all the time you're going to spend chasing the getting it done. Right, there's no circumstance, no process where you just set it in motion and then it shows up at your door. You spend a lot of time on the phone or on email or in video conferences trying to make sure that the thing you want to have happen happens. And so you should be presuming that your cost estimates are way too low, and you should build your campaign around that.
Yeah, like Mike said there, the most money will go into shipping and production. Sure, you should pay yourself first, but in the Kickstarter campaign, most of that will go directly to those two right there. If you need the artwork, that's another factor as well. But yeah, the big chunk of it is shipping and product.
Yeah. You don't. There's another expense that I think is worth it, which is spending money on your Kickstarter campaign. Like, you don't think about that, but I mean, we have a $15,000 budget usually when we go into a Kickstarter campaign, and that's what the campaign's going to cost, right? So the video costs something, the coordination, the things like you're talking about, going to shows, all those things cost money. And so in that month that you're running a Kickstarter campaign, you're burning cash. And so you ought to be upfront with yourself on that. It's a real cost up front that nobody's going to pay you for before you do it. And so you have to be able to do that to get the best possible result. If you look disorganized or shortchanging your own product, everybody else will see that and presume that there's no reason to believe that you'll produce the thing you're going to produce. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm sure you had a nice long list of all the expenses you were going to have when you set on your world tour there.
Oh yeah. Yes, I'm still paying for it.
No doubt, no doubt, no doubt.
So I think one cost that I kind of didn't really hear much about is kind of the storage and fulfillment.
Yeah. Well, we're bad at it. I mean, like, this is not the business I ever really wanted to be in, but you have to get good at it, and we're not. We have spent vastly more moving things around places and being disappointed with the results than we ever could have imagined. We've had things get destroyed in shipping on 2 different Kickstarters. We've had shortages in getting stuff to us in time. We've missed conventions. We've had all sorts of things. You need help, and you should not presume that that help is going to come from your friends. You should go find professionals to help you with stuff like that, and thankfully there's a lot of them around. The folks, in Seattle, there's Card Kingdom and Penny Arcade, and a number of other companies that help out with Kickstarters and fulfillment. In addition, there's Quartermaster and Black Box and Atlas Games and other companies that bring on games from companies that don't have a footprint, right? I mean, I think those are all worthwhile things to do. Your printing doesn't have to be you talking to somebody in the Far East. It can be you talking to somebody in New Jersey who talks to people in the Far East. And so, you just got to decide that either you're going to do it all yourself, and thus you're going to get burned, but you're not going to spend any money on paying other people to get burned for you, or you're going to get a bunch of intermediaries, which cost a bunch of money, and you probably won't get burned as bad, but I'll still have spent all that money. Yeah, and shipping rates, presume you're going to be late, and imagine there's going to be a postal hike or 2, because that's what happened to us on Apocrypha, and it killed us. It was a lot of money. Yeah.
Did you work with the post office?
I mean, there's only so much you can do.
It's
man.
true. It's true.
We have the best rates we can possibly have with some of our fulfillers, and they're like, well, that sounded like a good idea in 2015, but right now it's a terrible idea.
Yeah. We have at least had a dozen international shippers, but still, compared to your box. Oof.
Yeah, we have entire container ships that go to other countries, and not ships, containers on ships that go to other countries, and we lose track of them. Like, I mean, it's like we have to say, hey, has this arrived? Has it cleared customs? And then even beyond, has it cleared customs? Has the gate opened to allow the container to get to the place it needs to go to be fulfilled? Like, you have to be on top of this stuff every day, and usually not at hours you want to be awake.
So as you have your campaign running, I think the question that most people have are, am I going to make my target? Like,
Sure.
Am I going to make lots of money? Like, do you have any suggestions on how to know whether or not you're on target? Like, what can you expect over the life of your actual campaign?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Should I hit this one first?
Yeah, go.
So there's a couple questions right there. Boom. So when you do a Kickstarter, you will not make money at the end of the Kickstarter. All right.
Shouldn't
Simple
be
as
your
that.
goal.
It shouldn't be. The goal is simply you have a product. Let's make it out for the masses. And once that's been hit, ship it, send it. Hopefully you get enough for first gen and second gen, and then go from there. What's the second question?
It was just like
What's the
as you
arc?
get people, whatever it's called, purchasing in on your Kickstarter, joining in, like how do you know whether or not you're going to meet your goal, and like how to like projecting the targets that you're going to hit?
Well, gee whiz, that's tough. Actually, honestly, that one is, you really don't know. Because you could be doing great. You could be on fire, and all of a sudden, something better, something bigger, something like yours comes out, but just that little better. And, they might divert this way.
There's a few things. Yeah, there's a few things you can know. Obviously, you can know what you think it costs you to produce the game, and you can set that as a target if that's realistic. And if it's not, that is, if the target itself, you need $75,000 and you don't think you're going to get $75,000, you should really think about whether or not it's a good idea to put this game on Kickstarter at all. Because if you can't get there, then you personally can't supplement it. And if you do get there, then you'll have nothing left over, right? So you need to be thinking about like what the actual dollar value of the thing you're trying to create is. But ideally, if your target is your print cost, you want to hit 5 times that amount. Like that should be your sort of general goal, is you want to make sure that you come in with 5 times as much money as the amount of money it costs to get you just the physical objects printed. Because if you do, then you can cover things like all your art costs and your salaries and your, all the stuff that you need to pay for. That's a good target for us. So the Maze of Games campaign was a $16,000 goal. That's what it would cost us to make a run of 1,000 copies of the book that we made. So we set as the target that we were going to try to hit. We set $16,000 as our goal. I believe we set $64,000 as our, this is the best case scenario, this is what we're really hoping for. We hit $176,000, and so we had enough to do everything we wanted to do for that campaign. The board games ones tend to have higher targets. Ninth World was $50,000. Thornwatch was $66,000. No, something like that. But the point is, it's totally fine if you know you're going to make the thing regardless. It's totally fine to set the floor as low as you want, because you're going to make it regardless. It doesn't matter whether you hit the goal, right? It just matters that you have enough to do whatever it is you want to do, but you don't care what the number is. If you really do care, that is, if you need $100,000 and you can't make the game for less than $100,000 and you don't have $100,000, which is an entirely reasonable scenario, that's a terrifying proposition to put before the public, because the odds are you're probably not going to hit $100,000 and then you're going to fail in public, which is rough. Doesn't mean it's the end of the world. Failing in public is actually fine. It's a great thing to do, and you should do it as much as you possibly can. But, you only get so many opportunities, and so maybe don't make that game. Maybe don't make the thing that requires $100,000 out of the gate up front that you don't have, right? Maybe imagine that you could make a game for $20,000. $20,000 is still a decent amount of money, but it's probably gettable, right? Like, it's probably, like, there's probably a way to get $20,000 that there isn't to get $100,000, right? And so, yeah, I mean, think like that. Think about what you need, and think about how you will get there if you didn't have Kickstarter. And if you can't imagine it, you probably can't imagine it through Kickstarter either. you mentioned something about the arc of a Kickstarter, right? It's like what
Like
you
the
should
number
expect over the course of the thing.
Yeah.
It's real good to have a good first few hours of a Kickstarter. Anything you can do to make that happen, you should do. Somebody once said to me that a campaign that doesn't make 10% of its goal in the first 3 hours will fail. I don't know if that's true or not. I have no idea. But I do know that I heard that and said, I'm going to make 10% of my goal in the first 3 minutes. That was my response to hearing that. I was going to make sure that in 3 minutes we hit 10% of our goal to say, and so I primed the pump. I was like, okay, everybody, I'm going to do this thing, and the first 100 people to sign up will get you a free puzzle, and whatever other dumb thing I said, right? And sure enough, in that first 3 minutes, there was so much activity around the campaign that the rest of it kind of takes care of itself. There's still got a lot of work to do. You still have to do all the stuff over time, but you're confident at that point. People have you've built yourself a confidence. You built your confidence with the audience, so it's real helpful. I don't think that statement I made earlier is true. I think it's very possible to have a campaign that takes off in its 4th day, or whatever. I'm sure that's great. Like, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's great if you're out of the gate and feel real good.
Yeah, it's such an amazing feeling when that happens. Even if it doesn't happen, though, there's that momentum build up. Once you've crested over 50% with plenty of time, if there's 30-day campaign, you're over the 50% mark. Because you just need Kickstarters do best at the start of the campaign and at the end of the campaign. So if you don't do it, off the bat, you still have that end of the campaign to build momentum, go to whatever trade shows, visit the other game stores, split the team up. And then by that time, hopefully you've made your numbers, you've made the extra people, made these extra connections, and that last little bit is what you need. But, if you do start it, try not to, cut it short, just plug and chug through, and, it could be it. You could make it successful.
There are actual reasons why those first 48 hours and those last 48 hours are relevant. The search tools on Kickstarter are particularly primed for those 2 periods. There's a mail out that goes out to people who have starred the campaign 48 hours before the end. So they may think, oh, this is interesting. I don't know, card castle, that sounds all right. But I got to go on this cruise. And when I get back, I'll take a look at it, right? Well, then they forget. They go on the cruise and they never think about it again. And then 48 hours before the campaign ends, they get a little ping, and they're like, oh, God, I better get that, because I'm never going to get it if I don't, whatever, right? And so those time periods are important. I always find that middle bit is the most interesting bit, because there's a lot of chaos around the front of the campaign. There's a lot of chaos around the end of the campaign. But I try to plan things that are specific events during the campaign so that people are constantly interested. We have techniques that we use to make sure people come to our Kickstarter page every day. We do puzzles, we give out badges, we do not contests, we do fan submissions, we do all sorts of things. Like everything, there's always something going on our page.
Done that.
And I also time out any media. I say, okay, so I'll hear somebody wants to do a piece on my game. That's great. And they'll say, okay, we'll do it for day 1. I'll say, I don't want it day 1. That's great. I love that you want to do it, but I need it on day 7, right? So can you hold it for a week? Because then I'll give you a much better piece, and you can talk about how the campaign went and how we did really well and all that. If you can just hold it, and sometimes I'll say yes, and sometimes I'll say no. But at least I'll time something so that there's something happening in every day of the campaign.
So your campaign's going great, and
Thanks.
you've hit your targets.
Oh,
and,
sorry, that was not a compliment.
He means past tense.
Yes.
Yeah. You hit your targets, and so now it's like, okay, well, now what do? Everyone's doing stretch goals, so we just toss in
Yeah, boy,
a
if
t-shirt.
you're
and a
having
book.
that conversation for the first time in the middle of the campaign, that's real bad. Don't do that. I've done that. Don't do that.
It's true. It's
So
so
just
true.
the worst thing you can possibly do. No, have plan for success. What's wrong with you? Like, go over to Starbucks and say, "Hey, I got this crazy idea. What if it works?" And then think that through, right? Think about what you actually want to make. Do you actually want to go into the T-shirt business, or do you think just it'd be nice to have an extra 20 grand? Like that's terrible, right? It's a terrible decision to make T-shirts if you don't want to make T-shirts, right? So do something that's right for your campaign, right? Do something that's healthy.
Yep. So yeah, no T-shirts, no stickers, no pencils.
We did pencils though because we did a puzzle book. You see,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So there was a
Unless
reason,
it
right?
portrays to the
That's
game.
right. We did some code pencils, right? You could read the codes around the outside, which meant that your ability to solve puzzles degraded the more puzzles you did because the Z's would disappear, then the Y's, then so. But whatever. Point is, it was right for that, right? Like we thought it out. We had them handcrafted by a good friend with a laser cutter, and that just made so much more sense than a shirt that just said "I like puzzles" on it.
Yeah. So do things that will enhance your game and enhance your items.
And
Yeah.
also, if you start adding physical stuff in there, you now have to do
Yeah.
the shipping
Yep.
for that new
That's
physical
right.
item.
And it doesn't. They don't tend to want to pay extra shipping for the things you threw in at the last minute.
Yep. And wrong T-shirt size.
Right.
It didn't come out right.
Now you're a wardrobe specialist. Yeah, that's terrible. Don't be one of those.
No.
Don't create a thing that says check which one of these 16 options you want, because now you have to order enough of everything to cover all those 16 options.
Yep.
Unless what you're doing is like a great example of one time that worked is the Pairs campaign that James Ernest did, right? Where he has, I'm producing a lot of different decks for that card game. You decide which ones you want. That's inherent to the campaign. But if you're just creating choice amongst boxes to check, you're going to regret it.
Less is more.
Yeah.
Okay, so everything finished. You sent your stuff off to the printers. Well, actually, how do you send?
Easiest Kickstarter
Yeah, this has
ever.
been great. I actually want to do
do
this
it again.
one. Yeah, I think we can launch another one tomorrow.
Uh,
I saw you.
what kind of stuff do you need to prepare as you sending everything off to the printers? Do you send stuff to the printers before the Kickstarter ends? Do you send it wait until
No,
after it
I've never
ends?
done that. I've usually been about a year or more after that, right? So, but I mean, some people do. Some people are like, the campaign's over 3 months from now or a month from now, we clean it all up and then out the door. That's cool. Nothing wrong with that. Hasn't been how we've done it. I don't know how long was the gap between you?
It was about 2 months.
Yeah, so you knew everything in your game before you finished the campaign.
Yeah. We had to just artists had to clean up a few.
Yeah, we did. We've never done that. That's cool. Like I just we're talking about doing that for our next 2 campaigns because we know exactly what we want to do. We know exactly what goes in it. We don't want to do anything else, right? Like one of the things was that the Maze of Games was going to be a brand, and it was going to have lots of different manifestations and stuff, and so we wanted to do a lot of things out of the gate. The next book we want to do is just a book, right? It's just a book. There's not going to be any other. Well, there might be 1 or 2 things, but there's not like going to be. Well, there might be a lot of things. Actually, I don't even know. Point is
there a T-shirt?
there will be no T-shirts. But the point is more that the contents of that book are already written and will be laid out before we go to Kickstarter, right? So that's a huge thing to know that you're ready to go to print and you can go to print. But it's definitely a different experience than we've had. Ours have been so aspirational that we're not even 100% sure of the contents of the game when we're done, which is kind of dumb. And you shouldn't do that if you can avoid it. And I do it all the time.
So I'm trying to remember. Did you actually hand pack all of your games, or did you go to a fulfillment house?
Well, I hand packed all mine because small potatoes here, and so yeah, it wasn't a sum. It was less than 200, so it was an amount that I could do by
Sure.
myself, and with my other members. So we went and we packaged them all up. Used a product with UPS, and can I see UPS here? Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. So I used a product, and then we can print the labels out with the shipping included there, discounted shipping, which is thank you, take your pick, and it was great. It was we had the flow set up. We pretty much did it all in about 2 days, minus the international and the special ones that needed the special stuff. No T-shirts, by the way. And yeah, we're pretty much, we have like 5 left, and that's it. It's because they need additional something. But yeah, we hand packed it. I guess it's on volume though, because if you can do it by yourself, and if it's a small enough amount, I'd say go ahead and do it, because you're saving yourself what $150, and well, it's probably a
But
small amount.
It's costing
But-
you 2 days worth of
Yeah,
labor.
yeah, but
across.
that'd be how much time do you use watching television? You can just do. And if you enjoy your company, it's not work really. If you enjoy it, you're having fun doing it with your friends. Really, you're paying me to do this. It's great. You're having a great time.
So what does your fulfillment?
Oh, I'm
look
not
like?
allowed to touch a box.
You're not allowed to touch a
No,
box.
no one in my company would let me anywhere near a label maker. It would be a disaster. I'm not allowed to talk to the customers. I'm not allowed to. No, it's terrible. No, we've never fulfilled a Kickstarter by ourselves, and we never will. I don't think. We feel that process is something that has a lot of possibility to go wrong, and we would like it to go wrong for other people rather than us, because I've seen things where a single line on a spreadsheet gets moved and now everything goes to the wrong addresses, and I've seen people that have things that are personalized and they go to the wrong people, and I've seen all sorts of things. Like it can go wrong. It can go wrong any possibility, and so what I'd like is to have a company that's good at it have the best chance for it to go right. And so no, we've never touched a box. We've sometimes handled a few aspects on our own when they're easy to do, or they're incredibly specialized, but that's about it.
Well, since you don't touch boxes, who do you use?
Well, so far, I've mentioned a couple of them. We use Penny Arcade, because Penny Arcade we're in Penny Arcade's buildings. That's where our warehouse is. We have used Atlas Games was very nice to help us with Apocrypha, because it came in hot. It came into the United States like 2.5 weeks, maybe 3 weeks before Gen Con, and we wanted to have it at Gen Con. So we're like, well, we can't fulfill it from Seattle in a couple weeks. That just can't be done. So we sent it straight to Duluth, and they fulfilled it in a couple weeks, which was great, but they could then take some of the leftovers and drive it to Indianapolis a lot easier than we could from Seattle. So they were great. We're currently using a company called Quartermaster, which is out of Orlando, Florida, to handle the Ninth World. The company Black Box has also been very helpful. They're out of Chicago. It's all about figuring out what's right for that particular campaign at the time that you need it done. So we get quotes from everybody and we figure out what the right thing is. But it's super hard. It's the hardest thing I think we've ever done, is to just get a game from the point at which we're finished with it on the design and art and graphics side to the customer is just really difficult. And so we try to do it the best we can.
So your international backers,
Yeah.
how do you handle shipping for that? What do you have to worry about?
It's expensive.
It is.
I mean, you want to make sure that they don't pay any additional costs that they haven't already paid. So you have to cover things like the VAT. We have partners in various countries that we send shipments to. There are all sorts of complications around that, and you should really know the rules and the law. For example, if you're making something out of wood, you really don't want to have a thing where you have to ship a large amount of wood to another country, because there are certain restrictions about that. We try to make sure that the people on the other end of the phone are people we've actually met or talked to on Skype or something, just to make sure that we have a personal connection with them, because you're not going to be there. You're not going to be there to take care of it. And so, yeah, if you send everything from the United States, you're going to hurt your backers. So you should have a way to send it to another country and have it shipped out of that country if you can, and if you can do so under the right legal responsibilities. But yeah, international shipping might be the hardest and least likable part of the entire process.
I agree with that.
Okay, so after the campaign, you have your community. Like, what kind of issues can arise? Like, unhappy customers? How do you handle it?
Well, you've had a lot of those.
I have. That's very true. I am unfailingly nice on the internet. like there is no amount of money you can pay me to get into a fight with a customer on the internet. It has never happened, and it probably never will.
It's not worth it.
It's just no interest whatsoever. We don't defend ourselves. We don't respond angrily. We don't. It's just like we're doing our best. Basically, our response is we're doing our best over here.
Yep.
We're doing what we can. We hope you're gonna like what you get when you get it. We have some people. Most of our customers are fantastic human beings. I mean, like easily 98% of them. But there's a small group that are pretty loud and vocal, and they can poison the well. And so you got to be real good with those folks. We have a guy at our company. We have an account that is answered by a person named Sharky McSharkerson. And that person is constantly fielding questions, most of which are perfectly valid questions. But yeah, it can be challenging. It can be tough to wake up one morning and see your name dragged through the mud. But I mean, the end result is most of your customers are going to be really happy with you when they get their stuff, because you're going to make something great.
Okay. And so then you have extra leftover stock. How do you get it into a game store, or how do you turn around and I guess this is maybe for you, have you thought about turning around and trying to get a publisher to continue Card Castle past your Kickstarter?
Oh, well, not right now. I haven't thought about getting a publisher to do that though. But getting out to the game stores, yes. When we did our initial campaign, we did a point for retail versions. So you send it out to the retailers, but when they do redeem, they have to prove that they're a retailer, not just some average Joe that gets at a really good price.
So there's a certificate that they can give you that basically says they're a legitimate reseller, and you should ask for it, because it's. There are people out there who will happily say, I want 5 copies of your game, but the only intent they have is to dump them on Amazon.
Yep.
And so, but you should do absolutely what Polo says. I mean, build those relationships in advance. I mean, you were in all those stores, and they were like, yeah, you bet we'll take copies of that when you're done. Right?
Yep.
In our level, we deal with distribution, which is a complex and probably not very interesting side discussion. Distribution is a complicated thing, and it's tough for a company with one game to get a distributor to pay any attention to them. So we went a very different route, and we made a bunch of things, and it took us a long time, but those distributors are very happy with us now. So, I mean, you have to build those relationships just like you build any other. But you should be thinking about whether or not you really want to be a game company. I mean, there's a difference between you put out a game and a whole bunch of people bought it from you in a month and then you gave it to them. You're not a game company, right? No, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that approach. That's a fantastic approach. You made something and people bought your art and then they played with it and it was fantastic. Being a game company means you have to manage inventory and you have to manage, orders and you have to manage postage and all the things that really aren't terribly fun. And so you better find some people for whom those things are fun, because you don't want to do it. You want to spend your time making games. And so I think those are two totally different paths, and they're both incredibly successful on Kickstarter. Sounds like, you make the call. But if you're going to be a game company, don't be a one-person game company. It's too hard.
Did the audience have any questions?
Yeah.
I have an interesting one.
Yes,
you
sir.
guys talk about dumb stretch goals, t-shirts, stickers, things like that. And also the complexity of running your own Kickstarter. So what if you design a game and find a publisher or someone like that to handle it, and then they come back and they say they want 25 stretch goals. And you did not think about making something for your game that was a playable component or whatever 20 times on top of that because you made a small card game or a dice game or whatever.
Right.
What? That's different when you're publishing it yourself.
Yep.
You can think about
No,
it.
that definitely happened to us.
Is there a good way to handle that
Yeah.
without just redesigning your entire game?
So Oz's question is, you've designed, I'm going to genericize your question a little bit. You've designed a game that really functions by itself and doesn't need a whole lot, right? It's great. It runs, you're really happy with it. And some element of the marketplace, whether it's your publisher or the fans or something like that, screams at you to make sure that there is more of it. That you must make more, you must make stretch goals, you must make add-ons, you must make things that justify the object in the market. This happens all the time. It's not usually an unreasonable request, but sometimes the right answer is to say, this thing doesn't have that. It's all we made a thing, and that's what it is, and so forth. And anything else you do to complicate it is going to make it worse. But let's say you don't have that option. Let's just wipe that option off the table. You are not in control of this situation. You want the momentum to continue. You just got to do something. The right thing to do is imagine the meta space in which the game is going to be played. That is, the single greatest thing you can do is say, what do I want my customers to be saying when they talk about the experience of my game? Because you may not be able to add more game, but you can always add more participation. You can always add more discussion. You can always add more involvement. So what is it that holds the universe around your game together? Let's say you're making a party game, right? A game that like 10 people can play at once, right? And you're like, you got it. It's down to 100 cards. That's that game. There doesn't need to be any more of it. Well, but maybe those people want to play around with a bunch of drinks. So, all right, maybe you are in the coaster business all of a sudden, right? The coaster business is an okay business to be in. There's not a lot of different sizes, right? There's not a lot you can make, right? And like all of a sudden you've made something that fits in your world, but isn't damaging the existence of your game. A second approach is to say, what is it my game would be if it were if it were capable of expanding? And so an example of this that happened to us was we did a game called The Ninth World, and it's based on the universe Numenera, which is by Mantey Cook Games. It's a beautiful RPG setting that we just fell in love with. And I happen to know Mantey, and I really like him, and I said, we really want to do this game with you guys. What do you think? And they played it, and they said, this is great. This is going to be great. But it's a competitive game where you go around and you want to be the most valorous hero amongst the team, amongst people playing, right? It's all great. Day one, people came, they loved it, they're all great, and they said the thing over and over that we should just have absolutely imagined they would say. Mike, all your other games are cooperative. Why isn't the one based on a role-playing game cooperative? Like, isn't that a reasonable question? Right? Never even crossed our minds. And so I took my co-designers, Paul and Bo Radakovich, who works here, and out to Mexican food. And I said, by the end of this meal, we're going to design a co-op version of this game. It may involve some additional stuff. If it needs to, we have to do it. It's fine. We'll put it in as a stretch goal. We'll say this is what we're going to do if it gets to a certain point. And we designed a really good co-op version of the same game that actually felt like it fit, like we had actually started with the thing. And then we put it out there. It didn't actually add any cost. Maybe it added 4 pages to a rule book, which is not a significant cost. And it added more playtest time, but that's fine. We like playing games. And so what we'd done is we'd actually created a different social experience out of the same game. We essentially had made an add-on version of the game that just came with the game. And so I think that's your best line of inquiry at that point, is to say, okay, my game, the thing I did, that's a unique whole object. But what else about the experience could change if I gave it a little more thought? Rather than, I just need to make more of this. That's just going to weigh down your game.
Any other questions?
Other questions?
Down the corner.
When you play, how do you play test in public, but at the same time protect yourself from theft of your product and idea? Can you only do public play sessions near the end of development before going straight into a campaign? Or can you do public play testing a little earlier? Or how do
What makes you think they won't steal your idea when it's on Kickstarter?
Yeah.
I mean, like, so the question asked, how can you do a public playtest if you're worried about people stealing your game idea? My answer to that, maybe you feel otherwise, is that never happens. And so it's probably okay. That is, I like playtesting in public. I like people knowing what I'm going on. Now, I might have an announcement to make. I want to precede that announcement with no word about the game whatsoever, right? So if I'm going to do a thing, I don't want people knowing I'm working on it. That's fine, right? But then I can have closed-door playtest sessions and stuff like that. But at some point, I better tell people, and I don't think it should be day one of the campaign.
Well, like Mike said, I sorry about that. Go. All right. Yeah, I agree. You know, if you have to get the word out, you have to get your face in the picture, you know, somewhere out there. You can't be afraid to not put it out, because, you know, we pick from the pockets every day when we make our own games.
Absolutely.
You know, there's no idea that hasn't been borrowed, taken, or something like that. The theme, you know, yeah, you might have a great food theme, or, you know, with cats, like that hasn't been done before, right? You know, so some might say, hey, that's a great idea, but I'll change it to dogs and dog food, you know, dogs and bones. But yeah, no matter what, you know, someone in Pakistan or Zimbabwe could be thinking of your game right now. So really, they're you know, it's already out there.
Yeah, I think if you're going to be public, you better be committed to the idea.
Yeah, and the louder you speak, you got it first.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I first started designing, like the first design group I was in, they were very much like, no one's allowed to steal our ideas, and it was all very kind of private and stuff like that, which to me made sense. I was like, yeah, I don't want anyone to steal my idea. And then it wasn't until I started like playtesting with some other people that I realized everyone else was just like, no, I need as many people to see my stuff so that I can make the best thing. And like one of the designers I ended up meeting later on, he was like, I don't care. I am going to make the best version of this game possible.
Yeah.
If anyone tries to copy it, it will just be a lesser copy.
There's
no way that anyone can build anything better than that. And so, like, as soon as he said that, and like I started seeing everyone else just kind of playtesting in public, I kind of realized, oh, like, it's also, as Polo said, like, if you get out there and playtest with a lot of people, everyone will know that you are the one that originated that idea. That's right. And so it will be yours.
And
so
if it really is from your heart, there's no danger of anybody stealing it, because they don't know what's in your heart. right? They may see some mechanical elements that you have or whatever, but they're just not going to have the thing you have. And so, but I mean, it's still worth saying, even after all of that, there is a risk. There are people who are dishonest out there, and some bad things can happen to you. But the worst thing that can happen to you is you release a game that isn't any good. And so if you haven't showed it to a lot of people, it's probably not.
And isn't it true that it's really difficult to make a board game? So if you're just play testing with a bunch of people that you find who just like board games, what are the chances that one of them is going to try and rip you off and spend all of that time and investment and money doing art and all of that just to rip off someone else's idea?
I mean, I've never seen it happen. So, but that doesn't mean it can't happen. It just does. It just, even if it did, even if somebody said, like, I made this game Apocrypha, which is about saints who can see all the monsters in the world and no one else can see them, but the monsters are pretty unhappy because they're about to start the apocalypse. And actually it's really a game about Alzheimer's disease and how your brain betrays you, but if you spend time working on it, you gain back your repressed memories. Like, okay, hypothetically, somebody hears all of that, and by the way, that's not even a third of it, hears all of that and says, yeah, I'll make that exact same game. I'm 18 months ahead of them by the time they've heard it. Right? I mean, like, there's no chance that the first time they hear me say that, it's me saying, you know what would be cool is a game about this? Right? I'll have actually done some work and be out the gate. There was a couple of designers who were working on the same problem I was working on. The problem of people don't have enough time to play RPGs anymore, right? And so the time I announced the Pathfinder Adventure card game, a whole bunch of designers put down their pens and stopped working on it because I solved the problem. The problem still existed in their games. They were still trying to work it out, right? But I had already finished the part where I was trying to solve the problem and was now on, let's just make this a great game. There's a huge gap between those two. And so time is your friend. If it's your idea, you're probably already kicked it around so much that nobody can catch you. All right, what else we got?
So what if you have sort of a longer, more complicated game? Is it better if when you're out at a convention, play testing to play test a full 2-hour game, or do some sort of demo? 15 minutes, and you just try to get people interested.
Are you okay? So Kevin asks, if you have a game that is complicated, like my stuff tends to be at least an hour and usually more, and sometimes more like 2, right? So, and you want as much people to look at it and be excited about it, should you essentially try to bust that down so that you can essentially make a pitch version? Is that more important than like taking your time to get people to play the whole thing so they understand the depth of it and can report that out? That's a real tough choice. That is a great dilemma, because what you don't want is people coming away from your complicated, really exciting, deeply involved game saying, oh yeah, there's this sort of lighthearted game, I think people are really going to like it, you probably play it in 20 minutes. And then you've got a really bad image of your game out there when you really want people to understand the thing you've created is going to last. They're going to keep it around. They're not going to play it twice and throw it away, right? But if you can't keep them at the table, then essentially they're not going to walk away at all with saying anything about your game. They're going to just go, I don't really have time for this whole thing right now. They have this awkward situation where they're trying to leave. That's no good. You don't want that either. I don't know. I feel like the best thing you can do is know what part of your game is the most good and try to make that experience shine as quickly as possible. So if there's a big lead up to I'm going to just give an example. It's a just made up example, but let's say you have a deck builder that's an engine management game, right? You have to get the engine built up before you then go boom, and then it's in play, right? And that's a 30-minute experience, and that's great. But there's like a 10-minute window of you've got some of the resources, you just want to get the rest of the resources, and then you want to do your thing. Maybe that's the thing you should show off, right? Not the first 10 minutes. The first 10 minutes is you don't have anything. You're spending your time trying to get stuff. You don't really know what you're doing. Maybe you could go about 15 different strategies. Sure, it would be nice if you knew what all the cards were, right? That's no fun at all. But if you've got that like heart experience, and that's the best, that sounds like a great thing to show off. I don't know. Your game's a little more simple and dive in, right?
Well, with my game though, because what it is, you can cut the deck in half. It's the same experience, but you don't get it's a lot shorter. As long as we're able to, like you said, get the heart of the game out, get your core message, then you're good. But if they didn't have the time to play the game, you give your sales pitch. But yeah, if they can't play the game, get the experience that they need to get the feel of it. Either you're wasting your time with them, and they're just, well, I won't say you're wasting your time. You are getting it out, but you're not getting it where they can understand it fully. And it's up to you. You could either give them the core, give them the heart, or you can just go all out. Because they know it takes 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and if they don't have that time commitment, sales pitch. That's really what it is. Because if they're not going to give you the time that you need to experience it, give it what it's worth, good chance they're just going to play and then walk away. Yeah. You want to be able to say, here you go, take this moment and carry it with you. Tell your friends, come back to us later when we do the Kickstarter or something like that.
I have one of my staff members who does a thing that drives me crazy. No, I'm sorry, that's all of them. But we have a demo version of Apocrypha, a demo version of Pathfinder, and there's it's basically 110 cards of a game that's well over 1,000 cards, and so. We set it up and we're like, here's a thing you can see. It's got some really great looking cards on it. People can look at it and so forth. And then routinely what I'll do is I'll pile other aspects of the game around that demo experience. I'll take the decks that are not related to that experience and I'll put them right there so people can thumb through them and so forth. And she just cleans them up and puts them away. And I swear I've stopped her from doing that 20 times. Because, what she wants is her workspace to be uncluttered. But that's exactly the opposite of what I want. What I want is, there's shiny object. I want to look at that shiny object. So I never have to explain the Fey deck or the Physician's deck or the Deathless deck to anyone. They're just sitting there, and if they're looking through like, oh man, your undead are awesome. I'm like, yeah, now let's get back to this, right? Because I want you to understand the game. But I love it when people just sort of physically paw through the thing. Like that's got to be the best.
So one thing I'll add is I've seen a couple designers do this. I think it tends to be more of the ones that end up getting a booth at a convention. Like at the booth itself, they will have like the 5-minute, like, here is this combat, here's the end. You already have an engine, you're going to beat up this monster. If you enjoyed this, over in the tabletop gaming area, we have, you can play the full game. And so then that way you can kind of lure them in and then lead them over there to take the full game if they want it, as another option. But it still does require you to kind of figure out what your little 5-minute teaser is.
It's not a bad, just on its own, that's a great experience. Just to sit down with your game and say, if I only could play this for 5 minutes, what would be the most fun part of it I would have, right? That often takes a fair amount of time to figure out. But when you hit it, that's definitely what you want to show off.
Any of them?
Paul mentioned that in advance of Kickstarter, you kind of went on tour, different conventions and stores. Like, how far in advance of your Kickstarter would you recommend doing that? Or like, how long do you have a complete product? Would you be demoing it until you actually pull the trigger? And buy it?
Let's see here.
Repeat the question.
So the question was, how long of a time frame do you start your campaigning, and when do you how much of a product do you have to start doing it? The correct?
Yeah.
All right. So I guess once you actually have your product, doesn't have to be the final product, but a playable version of it. You can start doing that, and then start going to the stores, going to conventions. I'd say give it about a year, just for your local stores, and then branching out with conventions, because conventions where you can hit people who have like minds, and then definitely with the game stores as well. But the game stores is where you have to make those relationships with the game stars, because without that relationships, where's your game gonna go? It's gonna stop at the Kickstarter, and that's it. But make friends with the game owners, with the people that do all the game programming, and then go from there, because they're gonna put it on the website. Hey, Polo's games out, Card Castle, Thursday 7 o'clock. Be here, have a good time, and then after you get this report, say, hey, I'm going to demo here. I want to demo at your place again. And there's a good chance that they'll add you on the schedule. Or if you let them know, hey, this is my Kickstarter. It's going on. I need to, would you like to join in the campaign, put a bid on it? Not a bid on it. Put a pledge on it. There's a good chance they'll do it as well. And then after you got after you get the report with the game stores, go from there, and then branch out to the conventions. You could do it in tandem as well. And then because the conventions, you're going to get people, a lot of looky-loos. A lot of people are just going to walk by, they're just going to see what you got, and then give them your little elevator pitch and go from there. But I said start a year, 1 year out, and go from there. Because actually I was doing mine about 2 years out. And then
It's a long time to try to maintain
it was. Well, we went out 2 years, went to ETX, met Patrick, and then just went downhill from there.
That's usually what happens when you meet Patrick.
Yeah. I used to have hair, believe it or
That's
not.
how it is. Yeah. I like to have little flyers or postcards or something ready about 3 months before the campaign. Try to pick a convention that my campaign will overlap, if I can, if that's functionally possible, and try to do a big blowout during that convention. I think those are smart things to do. With the Maze of Games campaign, we had the MIT Mystery Hunt, which is a big puzzle event, in January, and we had the American Crossword Puzzle Tournament in March. So we're like, okay, well, that's 45 days. Can we maintain momentum for 45 days between these 2 points? And we could, it turned out. Like that was, but it was hard. Like that's actually a really difficult thing to do. But it was so close that we were like, all right, we want to start strong and we want to finish strong. Let's build around those conventions and see what happens. And yeah, there was a little fallow period in the middle because that's a long time to try to keep people's attention. But we built a campaign that people wanted to pay attention to.
And if you're looking at campaign times, what month has the most conventions? I think after Emerald City, there's iFest, then there's a bunch around Easter time, and then it kind of trickles around that time frame as well. So that's a good time. That way you're always hitting a convention every month, actually every weekend.
Yeah, that'd be great. You had a question?
I was going to ask, because you did so much in Seattle,
Mhm.
what did that look like in your fulfillment? Like, what percentage of
Oh,
your
wow.
games stayed in this area versus other places?
Actually, about 90% of our fulfillment was actually in the Northwest.
Wow. So that's fantastic. So the question was, because he did so much of his work in Seattle, how much of his games went to Seattle, and boy, is that cheaper.
It is. It's a lot cheaper, yes.
Here's something that happened to us. Do you know where Penny Arcade is popular? Well, in the United States, they have all those, they have all the fans here. We have all the conventions in Seattle, in San Antonio, in Boston, and oh, right, they have one in Australia. We have a lot of games going to Australia. 400 of them. That's a ton. Like, I don't mean it's like a ton metaphorically. It's a ton, right, that we have to move to Australia. And so, which is great. I mean, we love that we have a lot of fans down there, and we'll go visit them. It's going to be great. But better think about that, right? Like, if you don't know that's coming, if you don't know the geographic makeup of your audience, you can get real hurt down the road. And so I love that you built a local fan base, and all of a sudden, all these people came out. Now, we have a really big group of people in Seattle that are receiving Thornwatch because the environment of Penny Arcade grew up in Seattle. So there's probably as many games going to Seattle as are going to Australia, which is crazy, but it's pretty amazing. Yeah, I think it's great to build local fan bases and hope that they're going to support you. I mean, that's a thing you can control costs for.
Yep. We have, as I said, there's always that trickle down, because we did go to PAX. We do have actually some from Australia as well. California was the next one as well, and we have about a dozen international as well, which also Australia.
Yeah, they like their games down there.
Yes, they do.
Cool. What else? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh.
When you're mentioning going to different conventions to show your games, it's kind of a gradient of like, I have a booth to I'm there with a backpack. Like how to what, when playing in like a free play area or something like that. Like what level of commitment do you do at some of these places? When you go to a convention, do you always have your own dedicated space on the shelf floor, or do you just kind of try to find players on the side, or?
No.
That
All right. So the question is, do I go as an attendee and then find an empty spot, or do I get a booth? Well, if I'm able to get a booth, I definitely will up for the booth, because you're designated there, you're official, you have the official banner, you have a place in the manual, you have a booth spot so you can text it out, on social media. Come find me at section such and such, not by the food court, second table to the left. It's just it gives also more professional presence as well, that you're in this to win it. I know when you're at a convention, you see all the lights, the glamour, and you want to go out there and you want to play other people's games. You want to get the swag, but you're there to win it. And then you have to make that. I'm here for this, and if you can, try to get that spot on the convention floor to show that presence.
Yeah.
A full 2 months before you start your campaign as well? Or you still,
Oh, much earlier.
I guess I assume that you get to that point eventually, but when do you make that switch from testing up to your play testing?
I said, well, by the time that you've started going to these conventions, you should be done with the play testing. So hopefully about 6 months in,
Yeah. Although I don't think I actually know the words "done with playtesting," but I'm sure they exist. I'm sure there is. I knew all the words you said. I just didn't understand them. A couple things. Some of these conventions can be very expensive, and so there are a couple things you can do. The first thing I recommend is to find out whether or not the convention has a thing called it'll have a different name, but it'll be something like this: First Exposure, Unpub. Something like that. Something that says this is where newcomer designers where the games aren't finished are showing off their stuff. It's not a playtesting environment. It's a demoing environment. But it's generally a lot cheaper. Right? It's generally a lot cheaper than having a booth on the floor. And so on the convention floor. So what you'll have is 20 or 30 people who've got a game and a dedicated table, and they made a little banner, and they got some table stands, and they got their game. That's what they have, and that's great. Like, that's fantastic, because people who are looking for the next new game will automatically go to those places. They're not gonna, look between the Sega booth and the Bethesda booth at PAX for your game. They're gonna look in the place where new games come out. And so another thing that a lot of these conventions do is have, I don't know if they're quite contests, but they're like, well, there's one here, the Lucy Awards, which is going on, but often they're like, there's the PAX 10, there's any number of things that are just like, put your game into this contest, and we'll pick some, and then you'll get a booth, right? Then they'll give you a place to show off your thing, right? Or you'll have a 4-hour session that's filmed on Twitch or whatever, like any number of positive things that are for your thing. Be in those spaces and you'll probably end up doing pretty well. Even if you can't afford to drop a $9,000 booth on the floor at Gen Con, you probably can afford to send a copy of your game to a contest, right? You probably can afford to get a hotel room and then show off at the Unpub area. You probably can afford to go to a game store, for example, and say, I'd like to be here every Thursday. And would you be willing to rent me a small space so that I could just have a table where people can come and play my game? You probably can do that. Any more questions?
Over there.
Let's say you have a game that is still in playtesting mode, but the mechanics are generally down. It's fairly balanced and may or may not have art for it, but it's getting to the point close to being like, okay, I can start thinking about Kickstarter or whatever. Your product is at near that point. But how do you do a Kickstarter without any very high funds to start with, to have as a backup or to get you started?
We had
different levels of games, like something that's very simple, doesn't have a lot of artwork or anything like that, versus something that does have, the more high-end kind of stuff. How do you approach something?
Yeah, so the question is, you're getting ready. Your game's good. We're just going to stipulate that your game's good. Now you're ready to go to Kickstarter, but you don't have a lot of cash. So you're like, okay, what do I do to make sure I have enough to look good, but not enough to actually like put all the art in the game and so forth? That's about where you think you are?
Around there.
Yeah. Okay. Apocrypha launched with 16 pieces of art. The only 16 we had. That's all we're gonna, that's what we did. And we just strategically used them. Like, here's some cards. Look at all these different cards. Isn't it amazing? Look, this one piece of art just became the icon on that other piece of art, right? Or on that other card, right? I mean, we figured out what the literal minimum we could have was. Mm-hmm. And we're just like, we're buying, we're gonna buy, let's say we pay, like we say to an artist, look, I know this isn't what we would normally pay, but okay, can we give you $100 to do this? So we pay like $1,600 and we buy some art. Like, okay, great. That's usually plenty. If you want to show off your whole game, that's another matter. Like, you can do that. You can, like we were talking before, some campaigns are essentially pre-orders. At that point, you really should have all your stuff because you're going to launch it to the press a couple months later, right? So you should have a lot of it done. But if that's not your goal, if you're making an aspirational campaign, just get enough. Just get what you can. It's much better to go in with some polished art than all bad art. Right? Like, if you got all of your stuff, but it's just, nobody's excited about it, that's terrible. Instead, get what you really want. Invest. I mean, if you're not going to put in $2,000 or $3,000 of your own money into a thing, you shouldn't be doing it anyway, right? I mean, if you can imagine going on vacation for the amount you're willing to put into your Kickstarter campaign, you should be able to do that, right? But but you shouldn't do like if your game has $40,000 of art in it, shouldn't buy all that up front unless you really are going to send it to press right afterwards. Because why not wait till you have the money in hand?
Yep.
It also helps to know a lot of artists. Like sometimes your artist friends are like, I totally love what you're doing and I want to be a part of this. How do I make that happen? You know, and maybe instead you decide to go a royalty route. You say, all right, make this and we'll split some of the money.
I agree with Mike.
I think we've got one or two more questions at most.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a sore subject for me. Go ahead.
Well, my question is, how important are reviews? Reviews can go left or right because, depending on who the person is as well and how well they know the game. We've had some reviews. Well, I've had some reviews on Card Castle, and it's like, hey, this is a great game, but they don't sell it like I would sell it. And some of them are like, this is a great game, and they go through the detail, they know in the mechanics. It's like they were there with me, and I showed them how to play. They actually watched our Kickstarter video. It goes either or. It also depends on who the person is. If you get Bob and his cousin doing it, and you get Will Wheaton or Dice World doing it, and they're like, oh my goodness, they do carry weight. Sadly enough, it's not equal weight, but just because someone's more popular than the other person and their name carries that credibility, they will do it. But the question is, will they do it for you? Yes or no? Depends. Reviews, it's a mixed bag as well, but if you get that right review and that person knows what you're thinking, knows the ideas, read the rules, then it's a win.
So there's no profit to me answering this question, but I'm still going to do it. Reviews, I don't read reviews and don't watch them. Every now and then I'll watch a video because somebody is particularly entertaining. So, for example, I love the guys that Shut Up and Sit Down. They've done some nice things for my games. It's been great. But they're actual actors and they're entertaining. I don't really like the science of reviews very much. Here's what I really don't like. I don't like the concept of paid reviews. People will offer you the opportunity to do a review of your game before it comes out for a certain amount of money. I do not believe that will be a good use of your money. That is my opinion. Other people have different opinions, and you should listen to them if you think it's a good idea. I do think that there is sort of a sense of, there's a certain audience that says, well, I'm not going to believe what Mike says about his own game. I'm only going to believe what a stranger says about Mike's game. And I find that very difficult to deal with, so I choose not to go after that group of people. I have no interest in it. I do not feel like it is necessary for me to embed reviews into my Kickstarter campaigns. I have probably left some money on the table just because of that. But I think it's fine. There's definitely an industry of helping people promote their games through reviews. I think you should approach it with some caution. I guess we got one more question, then we got to go. Anyone ever? Okay, yeah, go ahead. No, you're fine.
No.
I just making. I didn't see it first time.
So we talked about stretch goals, but when it comes to things like back rewards, something that when someone pledges a certain amount, they get a little extra in return, specifically through that. I've seen a few video games that do this as well, where it has like cheat codes or something, art books and stuff like that. But for video games, what kind of backer rewards, if any, would be appropriate? Like say you have a game that has a lot of art that went into it, would using the sketches and a lot of concepts that didn't get into the full game, but repurpose that into an art book and put it as a back reward, would that be something acceptable?
That's fantastic. So the question is, you're doing a video game. I guess it applies to pretty much anything. You're doing a thing, and what can you do that uses essentially the assets that you've already created to make your backers happy with you? I'm not very strong on exclusives. I'm not a big fan of them. I don't like the concept of limiting my ability to sell something later. But there's real value to saying this is exclusive DLC that you're going to get if you're part of the campaign, or you're going to get it first, or something like that. And so the stuff you built to get to the point where you made your final stuff is always gold. Like, people are always willing to see behind the scenes. They really want to know what you did to get there. They want to see the sketches. They want to see the stuff you threw in the trash. You know, that's all great. Like, I mean, we did a thing for Card Warriors, which is the first version of Thornwatch, which isn't, like, it's just Mike Krolik drawing in his notebook. And it's great, because we wouldn't want to see that. And so, absolutely. I mean, I think if you've made a connection with your fans through the Kickstarter, they'll want to see what goes on in your brain. And that's absolutely the right way to do it. I think you're looking at exactly the right things. All right. You feel good?
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Derek.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Mike.
No, thank you, Paul. Cool.
Everybody